a lot of people I've heard throughout, my time here that John Gotti destroyed the mob. He was so high profile, and he brought so much heat. And I said, that's not true. There are a lot of high profile guys. I mean, Joe Columbo was high profile. He didn't destroy the mob. Didn't do it much good afterwards, because the FBI got a little bit more intense on people when we were walking those lines.
Right.
And Gotti obviously brought heat because he was flashy, but they didn't destroy the life.
Right.
And I thought Rico had so much to do with it because guys just didn't want to do the time.
Yeah.
It was one thing, Bill, when they said, hey, you're going to get 10 years, 15 years, you got parole, not a big deal. But under the RICO statute, and then what they were able to do, as you know, they can indict you for murder now as a federal crime, as one of the predicate acts or one of the charges in a RICO case, where they couldn't do that before. It was only state murder.
Right.
And guys just forget it. They said, hey, you either join us or we're going to put you away for 100 years.
Yeah, and just being a made guy, or even an associate, you've stepped into a conspiracy immediately. And then, you're a small player on it, but, let's say you're a policy guy, but you're still under the umbrella of this organized crime family, you're still going to get the RICO charges at different levels. If it was a state case, you get 5 years. At the RICO level, God knows what you'd get.
No, and you made a point. I'll bring up something that Gene said. He said, look, he did a lot of work for the family, and I believe he did. And then he goes to jail, and they don't even want to buy him a lawyer. They don't want to get him a lawyer.
Right.
So in his mind, he's saying, what, are you kidding me? I did all this work. You don't even want me to now fend for myself.
Yeah.
So to your point, I think a lot of that went on, where people didn't have each other's backs at that point.
Yeah.
And, what organization is going to survive under circumstances like that?
Yeah. And, I think, I mean, in the mafia, when you get called to a meeting somewhere, like, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know who you pissed off. You don't know if someone mistakenly thought that you were, maybe skimming, not kicking up, or whatever it is. And, I talked to Greg Scarpa Jr. recently, and he had mentioned 2 different people that had been killed who weren't guilty of what they thought they were. And so, living that life with that kind of paranoia has to take a toll on you. And I think over the years, if they weren't going to follow the rules of La Cosa Nostra, then you were going to have these kind of problems, and you were going to have renegade guys. And
and I'm wondering, when I got straightened out in '75, there had been, you probably aware of this, the books were closed from the mid-'50s right up through the '70s, so they weren't bringing in a lot of guys. If somebody died in the family, they could bring another guy in. But then when the books opened, they brought a lot of guys in. Maybe not all the right guys came in, or just standards loosened up. I can only talk through my era. I don't know how tough things were before that, but you certainly didn't have a lot of informants.
Yeah. No. It's. I wanted to bring up when I spoke with Greg Scarpa, he was talking about the first time he met Joe Columbo. He was like about 16 years old. Mm-hmm. His dad realized that he was going to be his dad realized he was going to be a street guy. He wasn't doing well in school, was hanging out with the wrong guys. So he brought him around the club to meet Joe Columbo. And he says he sees them crossing the street. They had fedoras on. They were dressed, to the nines. And Joe and his dad got into an argument after he stuffed $500 in Greg Jr.'s pocket. He was like, no, I don't want him to have it. And he basically said, I'm the boss. He's going to keep it. And of course, that's the way it went. But we talked about Joe Columbo, and he really was an extraordinary, man. And I had the opportunity years ago to meet his son, Chris Columbo. We lived in the same town, upstate New York. A retired state trooper I was friendly with, who used to do policy cases, had apparently arrested him a few times. He said, hey, I'm going over to Chris Columbo's house. You want to meet him? We're all retired. Who cares? So Chris Columbo told me, I think Chris has the greatest arrest story in the history of organized crime. And it goes a little something like this. It's about 7:30 in the morning. He's making his coffee. He's looking out the back window. He has this huge piece of property. And he sees his gardener running, throwing his rake down and taking off running as fast as he can. And he's like, what's going on here? He says, the next thing you know, this helicopter comes over the horizon. The helicopter has tiger teeth painted on the front, And there's 3 FBI agents on each side, and it comes in for a landing. And he says it was so surreal and so crazy. He didn't know what to make of it. And then he finally says, oh, God, I got to go and hide stuff. I got to do whatever. And I thought, like, that is definitely the greatest story.
Well, you know, I know Chris well. I can imagine him telling that story.
Yes.
He's very expressive, you know, like that, yeah.
I shouldn't have said it. I should hopefully meet Chris and let him tell it.
No, it's okay. He'll say it again. But yeah, and you know, I'm glad you feel that way. I love Joey. He was kind of a mentor to me when my dad went away, and you know, I was very active in the league at that time and all of that. But yeah, Joey carried himself well, class, dignified guy.
Yeah.
You know, commanded respect. You know, I don't know. You know, when I look at, I don't know how things are going on today. I really don't. I don't have my ear to the wall that much. But back then, there was some guys that, you know, my dad carried himself with class, you know, when he was on the street. Joe Columbo.
He had a presence, right?
Yeah, he had a presence. He was charismatic and, you know, he commanded respect when he walked in the room. I mean, everybody knew what he was capable of, but the respect was more, I watched the way he treated people.
Right.
And they were drawn to him, you know? And the same with Joe Columbo. And Perso to a degree. He was a little bit more of a, you know, tougher veneer, I would say. But it was just different, you know? It was different back then.
I tell you, too, I think, you know, there's a lot of similarities between NYPD detectives and mobsters, and I'll tell you why. So if you're a cop and you want to become a detective, you have to go into a specialized unit, street crime unit, things. And I'm talking about back in my day, or our day, let's just say. And once you get picked up by, you finally become a detective, you get your shield, you're a 3rd grade detective. So you go from a street guy to a detective. Now, your entry level is at the bottom, a 3rd grade detective. You're in competition with, let's say, 7,000 other guys to get to the next level of 2nd grade detective. And from there, you're in competition with, let's say, 1,000 guys to get up to 1st. So you're trying to make the best cases, you know, trying to be an earner, whatever it is, and make your way to the top. And then out on the street, you know, you case in a joint, we're doing surveillance on you, you know, different things. And it's a lot of long hours. Some cops are family men, some cops are out partying all night long, you know, and a lot of similarities. Of course, you know, we didn't have to worry about going to jail for the most part and things like that. Both dangerous lives, but there's a lot of similarities. And that's what I learned over the years from proffering a lot of people is we all love our families, we love our kids, we all want the best for them, and that's the common ground. And not everybody who ends up in a proffer is a bad person. There's certain things that go on in life that set the stage for where we're going to go. Everyone deserves to be treated with respect. And there's a lot of people that come into those rooms and get deals that never should have got them. So, yeah, the system isn't fair. So
I know that, Bill. But you know, I always say, until you walk in someone's shoes, you know, it's easy to look in, you know, from the outside looking in and making comments and everything, but you don't know, you know.
Yeah.
You don't know. But hey, you know, I got to ask you this: what's the best story you have? Well, let me go with this first. Were you under a lot of stress all the time when you were out on the street? I mean, did you feel it? Because I've heard so many stories about police officers that their home life gets ruined because they're out on the street, whether they're pounding a beat or doing detective work, or you know, there's danger around you all the time. It's very stressful. Did it impact you? Did you see a lot of that?
Yeah, you know, when I first came on, I trusted the old guys I worked with. I thought I was invincible and nothing bad could happen to me. However, as soon as you get into that tussle and you're by yourself, let's just say whatever, you realize you might be fighting for your life. You know, your heart's pounding. Each second feels like a half hour waiting for the troops to come to help you out or whatever it is. Then you go, you know, as you progress through your career, maybe you get into like a robbery squad and you're doing a stakeout on some really bad guys and it goes bad. Or, you know, the streets of New York in the 90s was so dangerous. Even for a citizen, they were dangerous. Much less the guys who were out looking for bad guys who were dangerous, violent, and would do anything not to have the handcuffs put on, whether it's shoot at you, shoot you. So, yeah, you know, driving into the precinct, the unit, whatever, I used to start to feel that heart kind of starting to pound, like, what's tonight going to be like? And then on the nights I was kind of a little bit at ease. Whatever happens is going to happen. But there is a great amount of stress when you're working in a proactive unit where you know you're gonna be involved in something that night for the most part.